It's my great pleasure and distinct honor to introduce my friend Ralph Salisbury. And because we want to get to what he has to say, we're not going to hear too much about all the honors and recognition that he's received over the years. That would take half the night. He's published extensively in various magazines and periodicals and anthologies, beginning, listen to this, in 1948. His list of published books, right there on the inside page, is astonishing. Ralph says in the introduction to Like the Sun in Storm, all of my poems are offered to the spirit of human goodness in battle, as always, against evil. He's looked at the world from the perspective of a man of mixed Native American, European heritage, and has taken his experience into his consciousness, and from it distilled wisdom in the manner of Native American and some European wise elders who have preceded him. Listen closely to these poems. They are packed with image and implication. You feel compressed within the poem and then released to enlightenment when it ends. Here is Ralph to, in a phrase from one of his poems, share with others forever, or as far as pastures have anything to say to sky. Here's Ralph Stafford with poems from Like the Sun in Storm, and probably from other places too. Ralph.
I'd like to begin by adding my thanks to Tsunami Books, Scott on my left, and to Charles for his wonderful contribution to the world of, we all share the world of poetry. I'm going to read a few poems, give you a sample from my new book, which has only been out about 3 weeks, I think. But anyway, it's pretty new. And be careful you don't get ink stains off the pages. Thank you, Mark, for sharing this reading with me. It was a pleasure to hear your poems. And I think the poem you read about my granddaughter reminds me to say that I think one of the greatest honors I've ever had was my granddaughter telling me, I was in Tsunami bookstore yesterday. I found your book there. And then she said, and there's a picture of me on it. So sometimes I'm doing the right thing. So I went through this book this afternoon and just sort of numbered poems, and I may say a few things about how the poems relate to my effort as a poet. Basically, I'll just present them. And I did spend 29 months in the Air Corps, and I was reading an article which was really quite good, except that the person who wrote it referred to Randall Jarrell's poem, The Death of the Ball Turret Gunner, and she put the ball turret in a B-29, which didn't have a ball turret. And since I was in both B-24s and B-29s, I happen to know that that is not correct. So the poem I'm going to read is about another ball turret experience. It's something that actually happened to me when I was 18 years old, a part of all that. Called Hanging On. Can you all hear me okay? Yeah, okay. Hanging on. I am hanging on to history, just like that other Cherokee guy, hugging our bomber's ball turret shaft, as if it were the leg of the hottest whore he ever got in the Eager Beaver bar, or maybe the crucifix post. And he's pried loose and safe in the loony bin, or in the heaven our ancestors were told they traded our land for. And while airplane aluminum melts, I'm holding on to history, somebody else's sanity after the crash. A few years ago, Ingrid and I were in a writing festival up in the Skagit Valley, and that was a fun place. But it's also the home of the Swinomish tribe, and they were having what I later learned were manhood and womanhood ceremonies, and so the drums were going all night. It was really kind of a wonderful time to be there. So I wrote this poem out of that experience. And it's titled, For My Swinomish Brother Drumming Across the Water. I'm an old one, not one of those selling whatever will sell along the new road to whatever has already been sold. I am both brother and killer of deer, whose hide I will strip from my family's meat, and offer all not needed back to the earth, our common home. I have lived so many seasons of venison, I feel that in uttering what I feel, it is deer who grazes, mouth plucking whatever will blossom and wither and seed, pastures of air, which I would share with others forever, or as far as pastures have anything to give to sky. One of the benefits of my rather primitive upbringing was I got to hear family stories, and this is, like many of my poems, based on stories my grandmother told, and it's called Throne. Feet just like ice were my Cherokee, Shawnee, granny's English words for children lost in the woods, woods lost to my other ancestors' money-making blades. What were they like to be lost in? Forebears of maples I bled for sweetness at breakfast. Centuries of growth joining hours of my own. What was it like to be lost among counselor wolves and ancestor bears and raven mocker witches shooting star wings, circling earth thrown by storytelling tongues from tombs? toes, icicle, roots, day melts. So, my poems come from various things, and increasingly from my children, and one of whom's here tonight, Brian Salisbury, my son, and our daughter, who's about as far from me and us as she can get, still be on the continental United States, in other words, in New York. But anyways, this is about my daughter, and it's a poem called Still Life, 19 October 1974. I should say, parenthetically, since we're all neighbors here, that the first grape vintner in this area was a guy named Bjelland, and his wife was a student in the department where I used to teach at the university. And you could go to his vineyard and sample his nice red wine, and the rest of what you could do there, you could find out from this poem. Still Life, 19 October 1974. A toy dinosaur and an avocado, and in the middle of this table, Indian corn, as red as the wine I bought from the man who gave the corn to my little daughter. Would Wyatt have died fulfilled with just red kernels told like a rosary, or Raleigh, or Surrey? A bomber I flew in, flopping like a dinosaur's scale-plated tail onto Idaho volcano debris. Avocados my wife ate in her refugee father's homeland, Chile, when she was 18 and seeking discovery and nearly died of illness. My Cherokee ancestors killed for the maize they grew, and for their gold they did not know was thought to be better than their copper. And Hiroshima and Nagasaki and the USA, not ever again to be as they once were. My wine, now history, I write that October 9th, 1974, Bjelland of Bjelland's Vineyard of Roseburg, Oregon, gave an ear of Indian corn to my recently born Caucasian Indian daughter. This is not champagne, so don't expect me to become alcoholic, eloquent as I drink this. just to keep my mouth getting too dry. But I will have this wonderful champagne and toast Charles later. It's natural as I grow older that I've suffered a lot of bereavement, the deaths of family members, friends, and so this one of the poems is an ongoing series about grief. Only air. I sleep where a wall kept father and mother lovers, and kept doctor and baby a secret known only to groans. That wall torn down for my sister and her husband's new life, and yet where there's now only air to nail family photos on, there is a door, and it is not always shut. And this is dedicated to my sister Ruth, and titled For My Sister. Her head is the upstairs room our mother died in, 3 flights of stairs after a long drive, hard. Rain on the roof, or starlight insistent as rain, or angels sibilant rapping. The fragrance of baking has gone on dying in me too. But my sister can't think how it was, can't cease trying the graveyard, another apartment downstairs because our mother is 80. Flowers are notes of what cannot be forgotten. She can't do enough for her. I know how this is, but my head is a clutter of my own office. Mother, father, brothers, aunt, they're bewildered here amid Shakespeare and Yeats and bottles of beer, paired off with coffee in a nervous dance. My family thinking, why, where will he sleep? I've wondered myself, but I will sleep, I know, but I think of my sister's head, hair gray as the shingles of the farm where we were born. And in an upstairs room in a strange city, our mother takes off her coat, new dress, she takes off everything, lies down, white nightgown, an envelope, inside a message we cannot understand, but all we have ever known. But I grew up in a rather primitive fashion, which, looking back on it, is probably good for me. But one of the consequences of there being a world war on is that my brothers and I tended to mature rather early, and this poem's about that, about going into manhood while very young. Some incidents. World War II. Awakened by my mom, 16, I'd clutch Dad's gun because he'd be on his way to where my granny got sick, and the army got my brother, and maybe it would be our hens squawking in the clutch of black marketeers, or I'd smell our tractor's gasoline pouring into cans to be sold to the big city owners of big cars. I'd shoot, and footfalls would flee, leaving whatever was too heavy to carry rapidly away. War and the deaths of some friends, and everything too heavy 2 years ahead. For a few moments of a few terrifying nights, I tried to be all that I needed to be to stay alive. Let's change pace a little bit. This as the introduction says, is kind of a protest book. It's just, I guess, one of my main themes as a poet. And so this is kind of a protest poem. And it's called Hall of Fame. Hall of Fame. Brain, no bigger than baseballs he throws, teachers say, marking his report card. A pop fly in mathematics, caught off base in English, wild pitch in history. For Saturdays he made the city a suburb of our hometown. a big league scout driving out to sea, Big Sam flinging curves like cars on the cloverleaf freeways, shooting star slider, catching corner of home plate world, the scoreboard lights brighter than bombs bursting somewhere over there. A hometown boy made good, Big Sam, Big Sam, Big Sam, who'd win World War II, blazing fastballs right down the middle, control in Korea, but lost it in Vietnam. A little league umpire now, Big Sam, Big Sam, Big Sam. Brain as small as an autographed baseball in a skull, huge as a Hall of Fame. A 20-game winner for years. I guess another change of pace is a rather radical one. I'll read what I call a prose poem of the magazine editor for Cloudbank, who published it, called it a short story. So my editor for this book of poems thought it was a poem, a prose poem. So here it is. You can call it whatever you like, but it's comes from one of my father's stories. And every night he would tell us stories or strum the banjo and sing ballads to us. And ballads, of course, were great stories too. So this is one of my father's stories, and it's called Bear, Bees, and Pipe Tobacco Smoke. Destined to fly in warplanes, I first flew to the limit Dad's arms could reach, and straining my little body full length, kicked bare feet up against a warm sky, our living room ceiling, and ascended through clouds of pipe tobacco smoke to land against a warm chest, whose breath become words would shape two men who hunted a really, really big, really fierce bear, because they and their families were as hungry as the dickens, and they wanted to skin the big bear and eat it. Where the bear had waked up from its hibernation and starvation, the men found some hair and some blood in the late and last snow of winter, probably a little rabbit, and the men found deep tracks in mud where their bear had had a drink from one of the springs which trickled out of ice-split stones. And they found white claw marks in pine higher than any man, including either of them, could reach. So big tracks further on, the hungrier and hungrier men found a bee tree and had to run. The bees still mad because the bear had stolen some of the honey the bees had worked so hard and so long to make. And here it was still more winter than it was spring, and no blossoms for more honey for months. And then the two hunters found the bear asleep in sunshine high up in a tree, and it was even bigger than they'd thought. Up there like a big black storm cloud amongst other clouds as white as sheep. A whole lot of eating for each of the men and for each man's wife and little kids, and the and the glossy black fur for a robe to warm the bed, or whichever one shot first. And bang, bang, they both shot fast at the same time, and they put down their guns and climbed to be the first to push the bear loose from the branches to make it fall down where they could skin it. And the one who climbed the fastest and done the pushing could claim the skin. And then the two friends would divide the meat and leave the guts for varmints and birds and trees of the forest to eat. Feeling a foot, a stomping on its wounded front paws, a trying to kick loose the grip claws had on wood, the bear roused up, and sharp, sharp teeth clamped down on the foot. The man, he grabbed a branch and held on for dear life, and his friend grabbed the bear by the tail so it couldn't go no higher to get a better bite. And it was tug of war, tug of war, tug of war, while they was hoping the bear, it would bleed some more, give up and just die. And the one with his foot in the bear's mouth, he was a-yelling, "Hold on, hold on." And his friend yelled back, "I'm a-holding, but if tail hold breaks, you're a goner." Tug of war, tug of war, tug of war. And the two men, they'd been in a war together, the so-called war to end all wars. And the one man, he couldn't get his foot all bloody and hurting loose, and the bear, it couldn't climb beyond the length of its tail to bite higher, and the friend, he just kept on, holding on, and the sun, it went down, and the sun, it come up again, and it just goes on, year after year, life after life, tug of war, and it will be years and years until the next real war, and Daddy's little boy, striding warm sky, falls asleep. Thank you. The title poem of the book tends to, I guess it intends to indicate some optimism in the face of considerable things we know about. I guess the recent election certainly increases my optimism a little bit, I'm happy to say. But this is called Like the Sun in Storm. That's the title of the book. And this is the title poem. Like the sun in storm, there was a place where the big kids let me hide, the space too small for any of them, between a white lilac and one like the sun in storm, or the blood of a butchered pig, darkened by earth. And when the game was done and everyone else had got caught, I stayed and still stay in the nest of the big one's willingness to let me become the pretend child of all of them, and the sense that the world, despite some slaps and the occasional crunch of knuckles against teeth, and my brother being sent to war, could be really good. Well, I published quite a few poems to my wife, Ingrid Wynn, my wife and fellow poet. I don't think I published too many poems to their father-in-law, but this Ingrid's father was sort of like my father. He grew up in Chile, in South America, but it was similar to my dad, and he was a storyteller. And so this comes from one of his stories about an earthquake and coffins sliding down a hill into the street where he lived. And then it connects that with our house on a hill in Oregon. Coffins sliding like kids' sleds down. This view home's sundown sides, whole wall, a window as clear as a waterfall, glistens of coffins sliding like kids' sleds down a street, earthquake wrenched steep, were what memory made my wife's father make of our valley's other side's lights, glacier glitters, and though turbine tornadoes heard melted snows stampede flow into tungsten's blind canyons, only the lightning strike from which I stumbled upright illuminates this page on which the father of the mother of my daughter slides beyond words wrenched deep as years before and beyond my few collide. So the last poem I'll read enables me to share something that you probably haven't heard of before. There's a little flower that'll be coming along in a few months with luck called the flet violet. And when Ingrid and I were camping up in Washington, we were talking with a ranger who let us sleep up on the promontory where there was no campground, and it worked out really, really nice. We had a nice talk with him, but then he told us the next day he was coming and they were going to capture this mountain sheep to keep it from eating this rare endangered violet, the flet violet. And so they did that. We got to watch it, and it was kind of awesome and kind of horrifying to see this old mountain sheep being hauled away. But and they were, I'm sad to say, we're taking it down to Utah so that wealthy hunters could have the joy of killing it. And we saw it hauled away by helicopter. So this last poem then, Saving the Flet Violet. War words I obeyed, as dead to me as those that incited Romans to invade. I learned that the flet violet would soon have been doomed by a mountain sheep's appetite, but our sister mammals been tranquilized and lies, legs splayed as if for human birth, suspended beneath a helicopter to be moved and hunted by some who need dollars less than they need the thrill of killing. I watch a scarce creature's being sacrificed to save one scarcer. My concern not to miss footholds in stone as I descend into an old volcano in a niche of which I see a solitary creature, its petals, the phantom wings of a prairie chicken, depression, hunger of too many like me ravened into extinction, destined to survive for a time, the hunger of another species. A war survived, I feel still, steel meteors slashing black fur sky, explosions transformed in time to a mouthful of stars, and a father's Milky Way bedtime storytelling tongue. Thank you.
Thank you, Ralph.
That worked out just right at the last swallow of water, and I'm going out of poems.
I request an encore. I request an encore. Come here to Western Edge.
Oh.
Yes. An encore.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yes, it's dedicated to my son Brian and my son Jeff. And I don't know if Jeff's here, but I know Brian is. So, yeah, come near the western edge. I try a last myth for the childhood of my sons. And for those of you who are local, the mountain referred to as a giant here is actually Spencer's Butte. Come near the western edge. I try a last myth for the childhood of my sons. For my sons, Jeff and Brian. The giant is eating the mountain, I tell my children, while eating cereal with them. A gray mustache is working slowly down the last green slope before ours. It is a very large mountain and mostly granite. It is very hard. It is much harder than limestone, which was formed from small shellfish under the sea in Iowa. Our old home under ocean? Yes. Once upon a time, an ocean ate little Iowa. Back when there was Indians, oh my sons, it was not the ocean that ate the Indians, and it was not medicine men who made the ocean leave. Before I was a baby, before Iowa was a part of the United States, or even a state of mind in a settler, before man, before words became language, long before Hiroshima dissolved like sugar in your cereal. Huh? Oh, my neighbors, I whisper, because I fear huge ears and the tongue that may crush me and my two sons. Oh, my neighbors, beyond the gray mustache through which a dying father speaks. Oh, my neighbors, the giant is eating very slowly just now. The mountain is hard. It is not easy eating. It must be difficult to live with an appetite huge as a cloud's. Live well, my neighbors, living still, where all will be green a little longer. Man was made to eat. A little conversation is said to help digestion. Laugh, to end with a reassuringly familiar phrase, make, and I am serious about this, make a good meal. Now back to the party.
Everyone is invited to make a meal over here.